This story is a work of fiction, inspired by real events. Names, dates, locations, and identifying details have been changed or dramatized to protect privacy and enhance the narrative. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental or used fictitiously. This content is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. It does not aim to glorify crime, promote violence, or pass judgment on real individuals. Viewer discretion is advised. Some scenes may contain mature, disturbing, or triggering content. What you are about to watch could have happened anywhere, to anyone. It's inspired by real events. Whispers of truth, buried beneath layers of fiction. We've changed the names, the dates, the locations, but the emotions, the betrayal, the fear, those are real. This story is not meant to accuse, only to reveal, to make you question, who do you really trust? If stories like this keep you thinking, long after they end, hit subscribe, smash like, and drop your theory in the comments. Now watch closely, before the truth disappears again.
Morning broke softly over Riverside, California. Inside a modest brick house, the smell of coffee and maple syrup filled the kitchen. Angela Parker moved quietly, already dressed in her blue hospital scrubs. A gospel station murmured from a small radio, a hymn that rose and fell with the sound of her daughter's laughter. Sophia Parker sat at the table, sketchbook open, pencil moving in light circles. Every page held some new creature, cats, birds, and imagined animals with wings too large to fly. Beside her lay a bracelet of blue and pink thread she'd woven for her mother. From the outside, the Parkers looked like every hard-working family on the block, steady, faithful, kind. Neighbors waved when David Parker's truck pulled into the driveway each evening. On Sundays, the three of them filled the same pew near the back of the choir loft. It was the kind of life that looked safe, certain, and blessed. But in every home there are things sunlight can't reach. Even in the laughter, a quiet distance had begun to take root, so slight no one could name it, so ordinary it passed as peace. And when the radio hymn ended, only silence remained, humming beneath the sound of everyday life. Sophia Parker's world was stitched together with small joys. Her bedroom walls glowed with drawings of animals and dreams of faraway places. A row of choir trophies shimmered on her dresser, reminders of Sunday morning spent singing beside her mother. She was a quiet child, curious and gentle, the kind who noticed everything but said little about it. Angela Parker carried pride like armor. After 12-hour shifts at the county hospital she still made it to choir practice, still packed lunches with handwritten notes, still smiled through exhaustion. Faith and family, those were her constants. David Parker was the calm center of their household. A skilled mechanic with hands scarred from years of work, he spoke softly and rarely raised his voice. Neighbors admired his discipline. He fixed cars on weekends for people who couldn't afford repairs and never accepted more than a thank you. To outsiders, the Parkers were proof that goodness still existed in a restless world. Photographs filled their hallway, church picnics, birthdays, laughter frozen in time. In every picture, David's arm rested around his family, his expression patient, almost tender. But up close, something in those smiles had begun to change. Angela's eyes no longer caught the light the same way, Sophia's grin looked practiced, smaller. Life in their home still moved with rhythm and prayer, yet beneath that harmony a faint discord waited, unheard. No one could see the fault lines forming under such careful perfection. They were the kind of cracks that stay hidden until the day everything falls apart. By late summer, the Parker home had grown quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from peace, but from something unnamed. Sophia still drew, but her colors had faded. The bright oranges and yellows of spring had turned to dull grays and muted lines. Her teachers noticed. Her friends said she laughed less. And when her mother asked if everything was all right, Sophia smiled and said, "I'm fine." It was the answer of a child trying to protect someone she loved. Angela told herself it was nothing, just growing pains, just school stress. She prayed about it, then went back to her shifts at the hospital. But prayer couldn't quiet the unease that followed her home. There were small changes. Doors closed that used to stay open. Conversations that ended in silence. Moments when David's calmness felt more like distance. He still greeted neighbors, still bowed his head at grace, but something behind his eyes had gone dim. One evening, while cleaning Sophia's room, Angela found a small notebook tucked under the pillow. She opened it and read the first line written in her daughter's careful handwriting. "I just want to feel safe again." Angela froze. The words felt heavy. Too heavy for a child to write. She closed the book, placed it back exactly where she found it, and sat on the edge of the bed until the house grew dark. Outside, the cicadas hummed in the summer air. Inside, a mother tried to believe that nothing was wrong. But faith, even the strongest kind, cannot hide what the heart already knows. October 14th began like any other Friday. The sun rose over Riverside, washing the neighborhood in soft gold. Angela Parker packed her bag for the evening shift, humming under her breath as she moved through the kitchen. Sophia sat at the table drawing one last sketch before bedtime, a small bird, wings open, ready to fly. When Angela kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered goodbye, Sophia's hug lingered longer than usual. Neither of them knew it was a farewell. By dusk, rain whispered against the windows. Streetlights flickered to life, one by one. Neighbors settled in for the night, unaware that a silence was about to settle over the Parker home that would never lift again. Angela's shift ended after midnight. She drove home through wet streets, windshield wipers moving to the rhythm of exhaustion. From the curb, everything looked calm, the porch light on, curtains drawn, the house exactly as she had left it. But the moment she stepped inside, something felt wrong. The air was still, unnaturally still. Sophia's backpack sat untouched by the door. Dinner plates waited in the sink, cold. Angela called her daughter's name once, then again. No answer. As she moved through the hallway, her eyes caught small details that didn't belong, a crooked rug, a frame turned face down, a faint chemical scent in the air. The kind of smell that hides what it can't erase. In that moment, the home that once held warmth and prayer became something else entirely, a space of absence, of questions without answers. When the first siren broke the silence, the neighborhood woke. Blue and red lights painted the walls, flashing through curtains that once glowed with morning sunlight. Nothing would ever feel ordinary again. That night, a mother's faith met its hardest test. The family the world believed was unbreakable was gone. And the quiet street in Riverside would never forget what it heard in the early hours of October 15th. By dawn, the Parker home was sealed behind yellow tape. Police officers moved in silence, careful not to disturb what could still speak. Detectives photographed every corner, every surface, every faint trace of what had happened. At first, the scene offered no clear story. No broken locks. No signs of forced entry. Nothing missing or stolen. The only certainty was that the truth lived somewhere inside that house. Investigators collected everything: fingerprints, fibers, soil from the garage floor. They mapped the pattern of footprints, measured distances, logged timestamps. Science would have to do what words could not. Angela Parker sat outside in the cold morning light, wrapped in a blanket from the ambulance. She couldn't speak. All she could do was stare at the house that had been her whole world. The search for David Parker began within hours. His phone was off. His truck was missing. Friends claimed they hadn't heard from him in days. For the first time, police began to see what the family had missed. Evidence started to build, quietly, precisely. Forensic tests found chemical residues consistent with bleach. A partial palm print on the garage door matched David's record from a past traffic arrest. Security footage from a neighbor's camera showed his shadow crossing the driveway at 9 p.m. The timeline began to close. Detectives tracked his movements across counties: small motels, cash payments, fake names. He was always a few hours ahead, but the pattern was clear: he was running. 9 days later, a tip led police to a trailer near the desert edge of San Diego County. David Parker was inside, sitting alone at a kitchen table. When officers entered, he didn't move. He didn't ask why they were there. He only said, "You don't need to tell me." Science confirmed what silence already knew. DNA, fingerprints, digital records, all pointed to one truth. A father's betrayal, a mother's loss, a community's disbelief. Justice had begun its long, deliberate march. The Riverside County Courthouse stood silent beneath gray California skies. Inside, a gallery filled with reporters, neighbors, and faces that once knew the Parkers by name. Everyone had come to witness the moment truth would stand on record. David Parker entered in handcuffs, head lowered. The man once praised for his calmness now looked hollow, his silence no longer a sign of discipline but of defeat. The prosecution began without spectacle. They relied on the evidence, cold, measured, undeniable. DNA under fingernails. Chemical residue along the garage floor. Surveillance footage of movements he thought no one would ever see. Each exhibit rebuilt the night piece by piece, until every shadow had a name. Forensic experts took the stand, translating science into story. Detectives followed, walking the jury through the timeline minute by minute. It was not emotion that convicted, it was precision. The defense searched for explanation, exhaustion, confusion, a broken mind, but no theory could survive the evidence. Every test, every print, every timestamp spoke louder than words. Angela Parker sat in the front row, her hands folded around the frayed blue and pink bracelet that once belonged to her daughter. She didn't cry. Her stillness became its own testimony, the quiet endurance of a mother who had nothing left to lose. When the prosecutor delivered closing arguments, he did not raise his voice. "This isn't about revenge," he said softly. "It's about truth. About the moment a silence too long ignored is finally broken." The jury left the courtroom. The door shut behind them with a final, heavy click. In the stillness that followed, every heartbeat in that room waited for justice to speak. The verdict came 3 hours later. The word guilty carried across the courtroom like a closing door. Angela Parker didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the judge's bench as the sentence followed, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Justice had spoken, but its sound was heavy, not triumphant. Outside, cameras flashed beneath a gray sky. News anchors called it the California case that shocked the nation. But for Angela, the story wasn't about headlines or outrage. It was about what remained. She returned to the quiet house she once called home. Sophia's drawings still hung on the wall, their edges curling in the heat of late summer. Her daughter's shoes still sat by the door. In the stillness, grief moved through every room like breath. Weeks passed before she found a reason to stand again. It came in the pages of Sophia's journal, one line written in a careful, childlike hand: "I just want to feel safe again." Those words became her purpose. In a borrowed church hall, Angela began speaking to parents, teachers, and pastors about the warning signs families miss. What started as one meeting became a movement. By the end of the year, the Sophia Parker Foundation was born, an outreach program built on education, protection, and hope. Angela's pain had turned into prevention. Legislators listened. Within months, new measures passed through the state assembly, strengthening background checks, teacher reporting systems, and support networks for at-risk children. California called it progress. Angela called it redemption through awareness. Through faith, community, and truth, she rebuilt what had been broken, not to erase the past, but to give it meaning. Her daughter's name now lived on not as tragedy, but as testimony. A year later, the street where the Parker family once lived glowed with candlelight. Neighbors gathered in silence, their faces softened by the flicker of flame. There were no speeches, no cameras, no news vans this time. Only light, quiet, steady, human. Angela Parker stood among them, holding a single candle close to her chest. Behind her, children from Sophia's old school had written her name in chalk across the pavement, blue and pink, the same colors of the bracelet she had made for her mother. When the wind passed, the flames bent, then straightened again, as if the night itself refused to let the light go out. A local pastor whispered a prayer. The choir from Angela's church began to hum softly, a hymn without words, rising through the stillness. No one spoke about the case, or the pain, or the loss. They spoke about courage. They spoke about love that refused to die. Angela didn't see herself as a survivor. She saw herself as a keeper of truth, someone who had been broken and rebuilt by it. Through the foundation she built, through every parent she reached, Sophia's name continued to protect others. Her story became the reason someone else would find safety, the reason silence would break sooner. Justice had come through the courts. But healing came through hands that refused to let her fall. And every mother who lights a candle tonight carries Sophia Parker's light forward. Proof that truth, once spoken, still shines. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Speak up when something feels wrong. Listen when a child goes quiet. Your voice could be the one that breaks the silence for someone else. Share Sophia Parker's story so it reaches every home that needs to hear it. And if you believe in truth, justice, and protection for every child, subscribe, stay aware, and be part of the change. Because awareness isn't just knowledge. It's protection. And protection begins with us.